I always mentioned I have all this flavor text. Well, I do. AV Location does, and a lot of the NPCs do. But I also create flavor text for events that happen in the city as the players walk around. I don't want to just say, okay, you walk down the street to the inn and now you're there. Like I said before, I'm always hammering in lore, descriptions, what they notice, what they see, what they sense. And so I think about that walk. Is there something I can say in just 2 or 3 sentences, mind you? I know what you're thinking. Keep it quick, keep it short, but something vital, something memorable, something engaging, something to show them what it feels like to be in that city of Verbobonc. Hello, welcome back to the 3 Orcs channel. My name is David, and today we're going to talk about the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign, the way I prepare it using World Anvil and maps I've created of the world.
Greyhawk says this Temple Elemental Evil campaign. Gug says this Orc campaign. We are strong. Spineless humans weak.
As I mentioned before in previous videos, I believe that a good epic campaign like the Temple of Elemental Evil is expected to be expanded upon and the scope broadened around the village of Hommlet, Nulb, and the temple itself. In my campaign, I combined the theme of like Game of Thrones type politics with the nobles with the Temple of Elemental Evil dungeon. Because as I said repeatedly over and over again, and it also states that in the module itself by Gygax, that the temple does not exist in a vacuum. They need support from outside the walls of the temple, as far as the cities of Divers, Greyhawk, and Verbobonc. Usually, the kind of level of assistance that the temple like that would require would need to be some rich merchants, some guilds behind them, and possibly, more likely, a few nobles. And I expanded upon all that using a lot of source material from the Living Greyhawk modules back from 2000 to 2007. Back to the temple needs supplies. They are recruiting weekly. They're getting dozens of recruits of monsters and heroes and powerful characters coming into the temple itself, being recruited. And they're going to need supplies, they're going to need food and money to pay the troops and the men, weapons, armor. For magical research and spells, they're going to need components, specialty items that the temple requires. They're going to need humans for slaves and for fodder to create undead, and also for sacrifices to their gods. So that kind of activity by the temple is really hard to hide. So that's why he told Lareth, one of the outposts in the area, there's 5 of them at least, to try to keep his activities off the radar of the nobility of the countries like Verbobonc and Divers, to play it off like just uprise of banditry in the area. And the politics I added to this campaign, they threw some misdirection in there towards the gnomes, because there's problems with the gnomes politically, and the humans want them out of the city, and the gnomes can't understand why they're being treated this way, and how the humans are trying to steal their silver, gem, and gold mines from the Kron Hills. And so the temple's taking advantage of that fact, and they're sowing discord throughout the countryside to misdirect the forces of good away from the temple. And one of his orders at the Moat House, as it says in the T1 module, is that he sends his bandits out rather far away from the village of Hommlet to misdirect, to not tip off the location of his base in the Moat House. At the beginning of the campaign, that was a very important thing. That's what the temple's up to at that time. And like I said before, the T1 through 4 Temple of Elemental Evil module, but Gygax states that he states that there's more outposts in the area, that the Dungeon Master should develop them himself. To finish also and flush out the village of Nulb. He already did the village of Hommlet for you, so that's good as a reference. So I use that as a baseline to all my work I do in my campaign world. So I finished off flushing out Nulb and all the villages nearby too, because I want to keep these players busy going in all different directions after all these hooks and these quests and these missions they're on. Because you can't really get them to Null before their 5th level. They'll be overwhelmed and outclassed. So you have to figure out how to get them up levels before they get there. And I have all these subplot quests going on from the very beginning, which includes the nobles and these different villages in the area. Like just to the south is that gnome village Shir Knob. I have a video on that too, where I created a map and I fully flushed and keyed it out. And you go farther south, there's Ostwerk on the border of Selene. That's fully keyed with some missions and some plot hooks down there. So is the Kron Hills with the Greenway Valley with all the gnomes. The capital and the villages of the gnomes themselves are all keyed in there with a lot of NPCs that are actually working with other NPCs in the city, along with the nobles and other powerful merchants that's behind the scenes that's pulling strings for the Temple of Elemental Evil. So knowing that the players will be probably going back and forth between the village of Hommlet, Nulb, down to Ostwerk, Selene, the Gnarly Forest for business, side quest missions, because the Rangers and the Druid organizations of the Gnarly are going to be entwined with all of this. This isn't their backyard. Of course they suspect or think that something might be going on, or they might notice future events, occurrences, because as the weeks go by in the campaign, the leadership of the 4 cults in the Temple of Elemental Evil temple, the air, water, earth, and fire, they're escalating their activities. And as they do that, the players will start noticing that more, and so does the organizations in the area. You want to be able to play that up to escalate the tension and the drama in the campaign when all these organizations and all these forces in play are tugging at each other. And the players are kind of getting to the middle of all that. So that means I need to fully key the City of Verbobonc, and that's where I'm going to have my campaign starter. I'm going to have all my players meet at the City of Verbobonc, and they're going to come together as a group and go on their first mission. The first mission leads them to a first level dungeon to the east of the Viscounty, past the swamps into the Gnarly Forest. It's an epic, grand first level mission. It's exciting. It's a lot of things are hinging on it, and this could really prove themselves to the nobility of the area of how effective they are, and they can gain favor and friends by successfully completing this mission. And of course, they're probably going to run into those Blackthorn orcs that are sending raiding parties from the south and Welkwood up to the Gnarly and into the Viscounty, and someone needs to put a stop to that.
Filth, maggot, dunghill, Grisnack, you got this into this. When I tell them at Blackthorn, paleskins do not fight, Grim says orcs be strong.
I think the players are going to have their hands full. You have a lot of resources available to that temple, and the Blackthorn orcs is just one of them. They're reaching out to all these organizations in the area. They're organizing this resistance, this upheaval, this confusion, disarray into the Viscounty area, because eventually the temple plans to march on Verbobonc and cause a lot of havoc. And of course, the powers at play, the gods behind all this, they have their own reasons why they want this to happen. And I run my campaign back in the year 576 Common Year. So this all happens before the Greyhawk Wars. And if you follow the lore of the module, you know that Uiz and Loth has a hand in all this for their own very important reasons, the plans that they have for the Greyhawk Wars. It's basically a redirection of the forces of good to stomp out and put a stop to the temple's activities, so that way Uiz can take advantage of that distraction. This is one of the maps I made of the Eastern Viscounty. There's the City of Verbobonc on the Velverdiver River. I have the players, as I mentioned in my previous video, they come from all over the world, the Flonesse. Most of them come within a couple 100 miles. I want to make it reasonable. I don't want them to come from too far away. It complicates things. I'd rather have them come from anywhere on my map. So this map I'm showing right now is the Anna Myers map that I've been using for my campaign. And if I zoom out, this map only shows half of my campaign world. So as you can see, to the north is the Kingdom of Thirandi, the ancient holy kingdom of Thirandi, like I like to regard it as. Verbobonc is on the bottom left. In the middle is the free lands of Divers, which is the northern part of the Gnarly Forest. And then all the way to the east is Greyhawk, the lands of Greyhawk and the city of Greyhawk. And to the south is the Wild Coast. This map, by the way, is from the year 594 because of the borders there. The Gnarly Forest lost all their lands just north of New Temple Parish, or Cantana. The Wild Coast used to be right about here. And then after the Greyhawk Wars, they lost all that territory. So the Orcish Empire of the Pomars grew this much in that war. And I should swap this map out for the 594 version that Anna Meyer offers. to continue, if you look at the Gnarly Forest, we'll zoom in here, you see that red border? Everything on this side of the red border is the Viscounty of Verbobonc. Everything on this border, to the east, is the lands of Greyhawk. And everything to the north of this border is the lands of Divers. They have a small area. And everything in between all these borders is the 4 clans of the elves. Clan Sheridal, Clan Faelfel, and Clan Enlanafel. And there's another one in there I can't quite read. I think it's Meridil or something like that. So a player elf or half-elf could be from one of these clans, who they are really associated and they're beholden to the Queen of Selene to the south, the Fairy Kingdom of Selene. True elves could come from Selene as well. And so looking at this half of my campaign map, because if you go west, I got maps of Valuna and the west side of Verbobonc. Players can come from within 100, 200 miles of the campaign of Verbobonc, the Temple of Elemental Evil area. So I like to keep them on the map because I have all the stuff keyed, and it'll be really easy for me to connect them to, like, right here, Dunmarsh, or Narwhal, or up here I can connect them to Divers, and there's a lot of NPCs all keyed in there, so I can associate them with maybe the School of Wizardry or one of the guilds, or the Thieves Guild or something like that. Makes the game much more realistic, more real, more immersive when you have concrete information about their background, like who they served with, who they trained with, who they were raised by, which village or city were they from, and what was the kind of place it was they were from, what kind of politics were there, what kind of NPCs were there. They can very well, players optionally can use this information in their role-playing in the game, and I try to encourage that. And it's a great thing when they do that. I'm really proud of them when they remember something from their background. But also it's a place where they can go back to for favor, to go back for supplies, for information, for training, for assistance, for help. And so it gives them a place to be from. And that's why I create this world the way I did with all this detail. My campaign, I decided to start in Verbobonc itself, to have all the players from all over this world actually connect together all the roads they've taken to become adventurers, first level characters, to look for adventure. All their roads finally took them to the City of Verbobonc. The one map I found when I was keying the city and using that article by Badfinger back from 2003, this one had the most detail and labeled. That's why I liked it. So I used it in my campaign. There's several other Verbobonc versions out there on the internet that are colorful, but they don't have as much detail as this one, because I can zoom in and see every street. I can even see people on the street in wagons crossing that bridge right there. And so I can really get a good idea what the city looks like exactly by looking at this map and zooming in. It's more of an isometric map there. And this city is quite big. It's one of the largest cities on this side of the Flanaess. And it's also the prominent city in the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign. And most likely the temple does receive help from benefactors here in the city, maybe a noble or two and some rich merchants, or undercover agents for like Uis or Aloth, or maybe the temple itself. Now let's look at the module from Living Greyhawk that I'm using right now. It's the first one that they produced back in 2001. It's called Noble Ambitions. And so it's a quest where a local lord is in need of assistance from some adventurers. This mad hermit was found by the guards of House Osbury in the lands of Osbury. As you can see from the picture, he's this mad, rambling, lost hermit that cannot speak. He seems to have lost his mind, and he keeps repeating the same words over and over again. It's a poem that leads the players to the first dungeon, and I think this is a great way to start the campaign off, to get them at least a second level before they tackle the moat house, because I need to get them to third level before they get to the bottom of the moat house and take on Lareth. And that's pretty much the goal there. And also to present the lands and the politics and the world around them, to bring it to life, for the players to see with their eyes, not just read about it, but meet important people in the realm, other NPCs, like the nobles and their servants and other NPCs in the area that have their own agendas and things going on. And so the players actually connect to the actual country, the county, the Viscounty of Verbobonc. the politics and the things that are happening. And I'm introducing with their own eyes or witnessing what's happening to the gnomes and what the different nobles are up to and what the people think and how they react to that and how merchants talk and think and react to everything that's going on. The players are seeing all this firsthand. They're learning the lore and the background of the campaign as they play versus me just reading it to them. So this module does a great job of introducing the Viscounty of Verbobonc to new players. This module was originally written for the Living Greyhawk campaign series that started in the year 594 Common Year, which is after the Greyhawk Wars. So I had to do a bunch of rewriting to fit it into the 576 Common Year for the initial first run of the original module back in the 80s into the Temple of Elemental Evil, and to actually integrate it into the campaign starter vibe that I'm trying to go for. Right now, I'm going to review the plot elements of this adventure to show where it's going. I plan to also, in the future, make a video of maybe 3 or 4 other characters in this group and their path getting here to the City of Verbobonc before they meet and actually getting this quest. I think it's important to see the viewpoint of players that come from the Gnarly Forest, people that come from maybe Thorandi or Valuna, and others that actually live in Verbobonc, grew up there, and getting introduced to this campaign and being requested at this meeting to start the whole thing off. And they're all pretty much strangers. Maybe 2 of them know each other. When we first start this campaign, all the players will pretty much be strangers. Maybe 2 of them know each other, depending on their backgrounds and character class and race. But they come from all over, and they're coming together from the summons from Lady Asbury, which is the plot introduction of this campaign. Every session I run, I do a session report in World Anvil. It's dated, and it lets me attach maps and NPCs and artwork to the pages, so it really brings the session report to life. And it provides links to everything I'm talking about in this campaign on any subject, like gods or races or locations or organizations, so the player can actually click on it and kind of look it up and learn about that information as a player that his character probably should already know. I start day 1 on High Holy Day. You know that this is God's Day, Readying the 4th, the day of worship. People have been pouring in from the surrounding countryside since last night. Bars are full to overflowing, and innkeepers are pleased and smug. All their rooms are taken. Meal prices have gone up sharply, and the service in the inns and shops have deteriorated just as dramatically. The locals warn you that crime always rises during the holidays to guard your purses. The markets are filled, merchants are hawking harness and farm implements. Farmers have brought their spring lambs, shouts, and calves. Goodwives proudly display their baskets of winter vegetables, turnips, potatoes, and cabbages. The promise of this year's harvest is represented by the baskets of seed, seedling, and cuttings that lure the crowd of the sturdy farm folk in the area. The festival of readying is but 7 days away. Those of the old faith celebrate the festival of readying on the 11th. This is when Luna is full, but Selene is new. The night is called Great Moon's Glory. And at that point, I'll go ahead and look at the druid, and I'll remind them what that means to them. And I'll also, during the session write-up, I'll send them a link to the lore that they need. 12 years have passed since the forces of good rallied to defeat the foul forces and raised the Temple of Elemental Evil. Valiant men from Thorandi and Valuna have joined with the militia of Verbobonc, gnomes from the Cron Hills, dwarves from the Lort Mills, and an army of elven bow and spearmen to defeat a vast army of humanoids at the Battle of Emerald Meadows. And as you can see, that's a link to the poem, to the prophecy, and also a link to the video I made and the song I published. So you can actually play that for your players. The army of good then laid siege to the temple and razed it, sealing the temple ruins. Yet, before the muster of the forces of good, evil humans and humanoids had laid waste to a large area of the Viscounty. I plan that to happen too in this campaign, the start of it. Players will pick up on that. Including the township of Penwick. Penwick is going to be a pivotal role in this campaign in the early part, because that's near where Lady Osbury's lands are. Goodly folk, both the low and the highborn, were slaughtered or carried off to the temple as offerings to the vile demon. Legends speak of the gallant stands, where local lords and the retainers faced a horde of and for precious moments they held back that tide of evil, allowing a few to escape. There were also tales of vile treachery, so some embraced the evil that emanated from the temple and saw their own opportunities for gain under the banner of evil. The scars on the land grow quickly compared to the scars that sometimes are inflicted on the souls of the survivors. 12 years have passed, and now the children of that disaster continue to rebuild both the land and for their own lives. That's a war. That war, that battle, was one of the largest and most known events in all the Flanaess in the history of the Flanaess. That's what they say, in the lore when you read about the Battle of the Emerald Meadows. I don't think it's the largest. I'm pretty sure the Great Kingdom had much larger battles than this. But it's probably the most important because gods were in play and demons. But who knows? But that's besides the point. Now, you got veterans from that battle. And since it's been 12 years, in the medieval ages, that's quite a long time for a human. So they're probably semi-retired, or their kids are around 10 years old maybe. And so they probably have farms or taverns or blacksmith or whatever. And so anyway, you're going to find these veterans around the local villages and farms. So I role play that up too. I'll have them mention the Battle of Emerald Meadows. Whenever in the campaign, I can refer to something in my campaign, I know I'm doing my job. I can refer to politics, to an organization, to an event that happened previously. I try to cement that into the players. I try to get them to attach to the campaign world, to get them engaged, to really care. So when they finally do get towards the end of the module and start facing off against the leaders of the Temple of Elemental Evil and beyond, maybe like the gods, they really have it in for them. They're really engaged. They really want to win, and it means a lot rather than just a simple dungeon crawl. So I did another flavor text of an introduction. So I use these introductions to read out loud to start the campaign off, and I also use it in my session report so they can read it later. But this is a date I chose. I have a calendar somewhere, which I don't want to dig up. And you can find it online, the Greyhawk calendar. So I picked Radiating the 4th, which is spring, 7 days from the harvest moon thing. I give the players a handout of Lady Osberry's notice. As a dungeon master, I have to figure out a way to tie this all in, to tie the players together, to get them to meet organically, to make it seem real. Not just tongue-in-cheek type stuff here. I want this to be an epic campaign, and so I'm taking it pretty seriously. Not that other campaigns are not just as fun. I'm just running this kind of campaign, and I think the Temple of Elemental Evil deserves that. So the notice that's out in the City of Verbobonc and at the Adventurers Guild, which is another tie-in I can use to get the players together, it reads, "Needed. Individuals of stout heart and strong sword arm to serve me in a task requiring courage, resourcefulness, and honor. Inquiries may be made at Jolly's Inn." And this is the second day of Radiating in the year 576 Common Year. By my hand, Lady Eleanor Osberry. Jolly's Inn is a well-appointed hostelry and caters to the nobility and wealthy merchants. It's located on the west side of town of Verbobonc. So I need to let the adventurers decide individually if they want to pursue this opportunity and make their way to the inn. Any native can give directions to a Jolly's Inn. And that's located up here on the top left-hand corner, which is south, actually. You gotta remember this map is backwards. So that's southern, this gate right here leads into the Viscounty of Verbobonc to the south. The north gate, opposite end, this is Thurondy side, on this side of the river. Because that's the Belvedere River right there. My other videos talked about that too. So Jolly's Inn is here in this court square, I think that's what they call it. And that's the Civic Center. C2 is the Civic Center, and that tall tower is some historical lookout tower. And it's all prominent, and I have flavor text descriptions of everything. That way I can describe it to the players. Jolly's Inn is C3, right here on the corner. Which is interesting because it's right near that south gate. When they leave, it's a pretty short journey, which I didn't realize when I first ran this campaign. I thought they had to go through the whole city. I had it backwards. Anyway, this is an important square because the universities of magic and music and lore is here. And some important shops are here. And The Cathedral of Twithlerin is right here too, which dominates the center of the city. It's massive. You can see it from almost anywhere. So real quick, we'll look at Jolly's Inn real quick. That's the owner. I got a list for good meals there. And Elke Rothman is one of the servers. I have flavor text of what it looks like inside and outside. Got some pictures of what it looks like inside. Just pictures I used off the internet. Notable people, goods and services, what a guest room looks like when you walk in case the players decide to get a room there, which they probably cannot afford. I get a lot of these descriptions from Scribe-D, or I'll rewrite them or put them together because some of them are a little bit short, and I need more descriptive, I need more flavor text than sometimes they provide. But it's a great resource to use, really to at least start you off in what you're trying to do. In the campaign, when they approach the end, they're going to see these banners over the top. In a game I'm running in person, I'll print these up and I'll hang them on my front of my shield so all the players can see it. Or if you're running this online, I just send them this picture. Some of the characters in the party might know heraldry, and they might recognize some of these and place names with them because they're all very important in this campaign. But when I run this, I do not tell the players, I don't tip the players off, and I don't tell the players who these people are. I let them guess or learn on their own. And it doesn't really affect the campaign if they ever miss any information. That's probably something I want to stress right there. When you're running a short module and you're trying to read to them the introduction of the module and the background, or they find some clues in the module and you're trying to get the players through it successfully, if they're not paying attention at one point or they forget, it kind of ruins it sometimes depending on the module, especially those year 2000 modules where we had these story adventures that you had to investigate this or that, and it requires a lot of investigation with different NPCs and locations, and those modules are intended to not be more than, 5 to 10 sessions until they're done. And so the role-playing, the interaction, and the clues in those modules are critical. So if the players aren't paying attention, they could mess up the whole entire module, and the players will not be successful. Or sometimes the Dungeon Master will have to fix it by some wave handing or something kind of hokey. And I try to avoid that at all cost. Well, this campaign is so epic, so huge, so much is going on that I don't care if people miss anything because I'm constant. No matter everywhere they go, everything they do, every person they talk to, everything they see, I make sure I got my notes ready. That's just constant when I'm telling them. The Lord Melinius that, Lady that, this place, the Rangers of the Gnarly, the history, the Battle of the Intermediate Meadows, what the gnomes are doing, where they're from, Valuna and what they've been up to. I'm constantly reminding the party players as they're playing throughout this long campaign. I stay in the moment, I stay engaged, and I stay on target, and I have my notes to do that. So I'm constantly feeding this repeatedly information in different ways to the players. I'm feeding it to them, and eventually they start remembering the stuff rather than forcing them to. So it works out really well. All right, in World Anvil, we have this campaign page, and these are some of the players in two of my groups. I removed a few of them. So my current group is the last four. Oh, I'm sorry. The first one, he just joined. He's a second level druid right now. So the rest of them are all third level, and they're down in Ostberg. But they all met in Verbobonc, and they all have their own profiles, their own backgrounds. So let's go to the half-orc ranger from the Gnarly. Isn't that so funny? But we made a good background, so it makes sense. This is his actual character article in World Anvil, not his character sheet. It's two different pages. I like character articles because I can really format them well. And if you look at the top, you got character profile, you got the sheet. If you click on that, you actually look at the character sheet. And you got their journals. Players can keep their own journals. So I created this full background of where he's from and why and how he got involved. A plot and hooks I created in part of his background to get him to Verbobonc, give him a legitimate reason why they sent him from the Gnarly, his father. I even address him being a half-orc and reasons for all that here in this background. And I finally get him to the Viscounty, and I gave him motivations and likes and dislikes. Every player, I outline the path they took and why to Verbobonc.
Half-orc maggots of Gnarly always hide. shoot arrows behind trees, they not fight fair.
Orcs like you don't get character sheets and they don't last long. Those orcs. Okay, let's continue. Okay, back to the rest of the party. That's what I did for every character. I made this in-depth background linked to all these locations that get them to the Viscount. Explain their journey and reasons why where they're from and their journey to the city of Verbobonc. And I gave them reasons for not only being there, but what they want to do next. I gave them plot hooks. That letter, that summons from Lady Osberry, is going to mean a lot to them when they find it. And they're going to be genuinely interested to show up to Gile's Inn to find out what she wants. Like, for example, the wizard from the school, University of Magic, his master summoned him to his study. And his master was holding that letter. And he says, "You're my favorite student. I want you to look into this." And he hands the player the letter. So his master is sending him to that meeting to find out what she needs. Because nobility, like the Game of Thrones, nobility is really important in these worlds. They're everything. They're the ones that rule everything and decide on everything. And the commoners, the peasants, they don't. They just work and their entire lives trying to stay alive in their families, and they fight in the wars, but they don't make any decisions of anything. Hardly any of them travel more than 10 miles their entire lives. And that's also reflected by the laws of the medieval ages and also the Viscounty itself. I have all those laws all drawn up, and it's really unfair. And so the players, if they're commoners, they're in a poor situation. They're going to have to really watch their tongues. They're going to have to be very careful around these nobles. And so these players are ready to go to meet with a noble and to take on our mission. So that's where we start the campaign. I also want to mention how I bring the city of Verbobonc to life. I don't think I ever talked about this before. I always mentioned I have all this flavor text. Well, I do. Every location does, and a lot of the NPCs do. But I also create flavor text for events that happen in the city as the players walk around. I don't want to just say, okay, you walk down the street to the inn and now you're there. Like I said before, I'm always hammering in lore, descriptions, what they notice, what they see, what they sense. And so I think about that walk. Is there something I can say in just 2 or 3 sentences, mind you? I know what you're thinking. Keep it quick, keep it short, but something vital, something memorable, something engaging, something to show them what it feels like to be in that city of Verbobonc, to be on the way to this rich inn, to meet with a noble. I want to hammer this in. Witnessing what's happening in the gnomes, the yelling down the street, to hear the gnome voices yelling, screaming at a merchant, and overhearing that conversation. I add that in, and I got videos coming up where I'll go ahead and I'll show each player their journey through the city, going to the inn to get the first quest, and what they witness, and what happens to them. Actually, a few things do happen to some of the players on the way there. I give them thick, serious plot hooks before they even get to the inn. And so they have some serious reasoning behind what they're up to, what they're doing, their concerns in this campaign. Some of the source material that I use to create this stuff, because it's hard to create something from total scratch, but if I got a little tidbit of information, like from scribd, I can run with it. That's why I make flavor text. I know a lot of you could roleplay, anything out of a paper bag, but I find it difficult to roleplay with no information at all, from scratch, from nothing. It's like I can't do a character voice unless I hear a couple words first to get me going for that, like a Scottish or UK, or German or Russian. I can't just do it right then and there. I have to hear a couple words first to trigger it. So same thing here. I use a couple great products I got from RPG, the website. I bought these PDFs. One's called Shards of the City. And this is awesome. I created some great scenarios of just walking through the city and things they witness. I actually created a couple subquests from this list as well. I used On a Mission from God, which is huge. It's a really big, good little mini quest that I have one of the players get involved with. And it's really special. It really engages that player. I mean, it like takes them and slams them against the wall. That's how much attention it gets them. It shocks them. Nobody really expects D&D to be that good. And that's what this does. I also used the hay wagon at the gates, trying to get into the gates, and they witnessed some thieves sneaking into the city when the guards' attention was turned to the commotion. I show things like that. That way the players know, this thief's sneaking into this city. And that's how they do it. Things like that. Just little things like that to show, what's going on. Like at taverns or inns, same thing. There's some really divish type taverns where they hire mercenaries of all types. And that happens in this campaign. They hire like 10 adventurer cutthroats, mercenaries from one of the taverns to follow the players and kill them. And it all connects to a real place, a tavern that one of the players probably hang out at and has a room at. And he probably met some of these guys. He's talked to them, had drinks with them. That's how deep it can get, how it can connect. It's not just vague, a bunch of bandits with no names. No, far from it. I know what every bandit in this entire campaign knows exactly. If you question any bandit in this campaign anywhere, all over the map, I know exactly what they know and who they report to. Because you really need to know that stuff, especially when the party starts interrogating them. And you really got to watch yourself, because you could blow your campaign wide open by giving them too much information too early in the game. So that really needs to be plotted out. At least a line item chart, the bullet points or something. All right, so I use all these. The floating mage is really cool. I use that as flavor to show just how powerful mages are in the city. You just see him floating by. It's awesome. It gives the character a look. So that's what I use for this one for. Another one I use is called Bits of the Boulevard. I purchased this one too. I think these are kind of expensive, but I bought them anyway because I take my campaign seriously. This one is awesome because it's got scenes on the streets or at the walls or at the gates. Just a scene like it's raining and people are running through puddles from the rain. One lady is in the middle of the night. She's got this wine bottle and she's struggling in the rain, and she knocks on the door, and this rough man opens the door and yells at her, and she gives him the wine bottle, and then she walks in after him with her head down. It's just thematic, something the player witnesses as they're on the way back to the academy or something. And that's really only 4 sentences. I always want to say something whenever they do something. When they go from one location to another, I just want to add a little bit of something. So that way, it slowly, over time, the players learn more about the city and what it's like there, the flavor of it. So this one's got a lot of great things. It's numbered 1 through 100 different categories, and it even has artwork that you can share with your players. I mean, this is perfect. That picture right there I use at the merchant marketplace. He's selling sweet treats. That's what it looks like to me. Oh, there it is right there. It's number 5. He's a jolly red-faced man with a white hat and tunic and a huge smile, offering his pastries to the crowd. Sweet pastries, fruit and honey. And his smile is sincere, and he seems genuinely enthused about his fruit pies. And so as the party was on their way to the Adventurers Guild, some of the players in that group might be a plain fighter. And I have a different reason why they're in the city, or maybe they were born there. But anyway, they probably are looking for work at the Adventurers Guild. The wizard probably isn't, because he's at the academy, and they usually handle that sort of thing. It's just get a way to think your way out of this. Think of your way how the party can come together and where they're from. So usually I'll throw something like this in on a logical path of what somebody would take to start the campaign off. So the idea here is this. You got a background. The players read it. They think that's cool. It's awesome. I put some hooks in their background too, and why they're here. Okay, cool. We're staying at this inn, or we're staying at the academy, or we're staying at that temple because I'm a cleric. And the master of that cleric, the bishop, he's going to call on him and give him the letter. And so after that, they're going to find their way on the way to Jolly's Inn. But the fighter, he probably doesn't really report to anybody, and those kind of characters, I have them go to the Adventurers Guild. And there's a whole thing about the Adventurers Guild too. You have to be a member. And the notice is on the bulletin board there. But anyway, as they're walking through the city from one point to another, I'll add these little things in, just to give it flavor. But the key is not too long, you'll bore your players. There's great artwork. Look at this. It's this endless amount of material you can use in your campaign. It goes on forever. Let's see how big this is. How many pages? God, it's there's no more pages anymore. Oh, I see what happened. This is a cool article. This is a cool PDF because the first half is actual PDF information. Pages, 30, 40 pages, I guess. And then the next half is awesome. They're printouts. Like card. Some people like to DM with index cards. And this gives you all the information above in index cards. There you go. That's where it starts. So if you look at number 1, which is at the beginning of this PDF, the DM could roleplay a dozen merchants, call out prices and wares, and practice sing-song chants. Some are very exuberant businessmen juggling their wares as they call out. So I have that at the beginning of this PDF that I could use, and I'll copy-paste it and put it in my campaign notes. Or you can just print these cards out if you're that kind of DM and you have a collection of cards in front of you. So this is a great product. I highly recommend it. Speaking of recommendations, if you look down at the bottom of my video, I recommended several books about Gary Gygax. I highly recommend these books. They're fascinating to read. They're riveting. They're tearjerkers. They're startling. They're fascinating. His life, what happened to the industry, what happened to D&D, what happened to him. I think it's utterly fascinating. It's not so interesting after 1999, but all the early stuff, the beginning of the books are great. I love it. And those 3 books are definitely recommended to read. And so in regards to the PDFs I just showed you, this is me converting them into World Anvil pages. So the World Anvil pages, I just created my favorites. I took my favorites from the articles and I put them in a list. And I put the relevant links where I placed these in the city off to the right, and attached them to some of the plots too. And so I like the butcher shop. I like the best bread bakery. I like the waterfront. Great description of the waterfront. You know, when you're role playing and you're walking these players around the city, and they're gonna walk past the waterfront. I mean, you could just say some generic stuff about the waterfront, about the boats and the ropes and the sailors and the cursing, and maybe the birds. But that's about it. But if you really want to bring this place to life, to be a very specific place, to make this Verbobonc very distinctive, I write this stuff out. And so I'll take that PDF information and I'll kind of rewrite it, and I'll add stuff. And so that's fantastic stuff. The finest eel in town right here. Wriggling only yesterday, baked into fresh pastry with cheese and rare spices from the east. Care for a pastry? Buildings of the city. I got descriptions of just the buildings themselves. You remember, like I said, if somebody's walking down the street, I want to tell them something. Well, one of the things you can describe in one of the journeys is what the building looks like. You know, how they look, what they look like, what you see in the skyline. You see that temple at Trithrin? That cathedral is towering over the rest of these buildings from like blocks away. I like to at least pay attention to that, call that out to the players, give them an idea. You know, give them a sense of what it's like to be in that city. They got hanging wood signs along with the street that creak rhythmically in the gentle breeze. So sewage. So I actually point out sewage at one point. The odors of the city are prevalent wherever you go. The pleasant aromas of food from the inns and cookshops are punctuated with pungent smell of animal and human waste that mingles with the scent from the piles of rotting garbage in the alleyways. While there is a law that has been passed to prevent people from dumping waste into the streets, obviously not entirely effective because apparently the inhabitants don't feel that the law includes alleys. You know, that little thing right there, that little nugget I like to share with the players at one point or another. The floating mage I was telling you about, he's one of the instructors over at the University of Mages, the Silver Consortium. He's very arrogant and he floats in the crowd. Everybody makes way for him. The bridge walk. Yeah, the Bridgewalk Bridge. That big bridge that crosses the Velvet Iver River into Gnomesburg. Yeah, you definitely need some sort of you need some kind of descriptive text for that to really hammer it in what they really see when they cross that bridge and looking out and down into Thirandi. I want to make sure I can describe that well. And if I feel like I need it, I'll add a child that's fishing on the bridge with his dog trying to steal his fish. Sometimes, if it gets over too much, I won't do it. But if I feel like I could use it at that moment, I'll pull that out of my hat. I guess that's why those index cards are good. And exiting the city. So I got things that are happening as they exit the city. The guards are questioning travelers. There's mud. The streets are crowded. Marketplace description, what it's like to be at the marketplace. A spiced tea stall at the marketplace. Just kids are shopping. I love this one. A young boy, skin as tanned as boot leather. He leads 2 young girls by the hand through the crowded streets. The boy is perhaps 8 years of age. The girls, obviously twins, are about 5 or so. The 3 children have large cloths tied around their shoulders to form some crude backpacks. And all of them struggle under the loads of potatoes, radishes, and beets as they carry them away from the market. You know, the little things like that I like to point out to players as they're doing things. If I get that breather, that pause in the role playing that session that night, I'll throw something like that in. I'll always be ready to throw it in, but I sort of gauge it because I don't want to spend the whole night just doing this stuff. Pastry seller on the street, I got him ready to go. A Fletcher stall, that's kind of cool. I picked these out because they're very interesting. They're very unique, these things I saved in this webpage. Leaving the city behind, what it looks like on the road as you leave the city behind. When you look back behind you at the gates and the walls, I kind of got stuff like that. People you're passing on the road, people out in the farm fields around you as you travel a lot across the countryside away from the city. Got all that described, so it's ready to go, so I can just bang it out as we're playing along and continuing the journey. And then we get to a campsite, and then we got morning weather. We got the weather in the afternoon, and we got the onset of a storm coming. I got rain barrels in the city streets. I got the city in the storm. So if there's a big storm hitting the city, which I do have on day 1, that night, I have a big storm hit the city, and there's puddles and there's a river going down the roads, and it's pretty interesting. You know, I think it's a dramatic effect on day 1, night 1 of the first session of the campaign. This will happen after meeting Lady Osbury at Jiley's Inn. So anyway, there we go, all the way to the end. And I got that one I told you about earlier about the women going home with their ale or her wine. And then the last one is going to the Monastery of Rayo, which is another huge side quest called the Mission from God. And that's really stunning. I love that one. Wow, there's a lot to talk about. I can go on for hours. It's taken me 5 years to put this all together. At this point, this video was just to showcase the overview of day 1, session 1, and how I getting the players together. I'm going to make some videos on each one of them getting here, and also I'm going to make a video starting with the very first scene of meeting Lady Asbury at Jolly's Inn. So if you like what you've seen so far, please hit like below. Comment down below if any questions you have or suggestions or ideas that you had for the campaign based on coming from the City of Verbobonc. So Driznak, do you have anything to add?
Did you enjoy video? Consider tossing support on my Patreon. It's best way to support orcs. If you would like to see more content, subscribe and post comments below. It better not be bad.
Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Have fun gaming.